Andrew.
Hello, Rishi.
All right, we're back. Another live project feedback session. We have around 15, 16 companies today that will be going through giving feedback based on questions that they've submitted. They're all projects from the top 50 on Pioneer, or that have been in the top 50 since we last did one of these in May. Daniel will be joining us momentarily, but Andrew, do you want to kick us off?
Let's go ahead and get started. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So our first company we have is Fresh Farm to Door, and their question is, what should I be focused on building, and how do I differentiate from competitors? So let's take a look at what they do. Oh, it looks like they deliver ingredients, produce, fresh from the farm to your door. So in terms of what you should be focusing on or what you should be building, it seems like something that you should be asking your customers. I assume that they have certain needs, like whether it's timely delivery or if it's delivery in a certain location. And building features to better service those customers seems like the right next step. It's a pretty vague question. I mean, you could be working on a bunch of different things, but at your stage, it feels like acquiring customers seems like the right step for you, like whether you're at a certain number today and you want to grow that by a certain amount by next month or whatever it is, but just increasing your customer base. And the way to do that when it comes to building is to focus on both the product that you're building and how you acquire users. So the product that you're building, it sounds like that's like, logistical to improve checkout, improve sourcing, all that sort of stuff. And the acquisition piece is how can you find more customers? That's like, how can you improve your SEO? How can you improve social acquisition, et cetera? So I would say your time should be split across those things, focusing on product and finding users to engage with your products. And the next question, which is, how do I differentiate from competitors? It feels like this is a hyper local question where like a company that's doing this in the United States or a company that's doing this in Europe probably has a different set of competitors than a company doing this in where you are, which it looks like you're in Lagos, so Nigeria. I'm assuming that the people that are your target customers have alternatives, right? They can either go to the market to get something, or maybe they know somebody to get produce from. Ask yourself, what issues do those customers have today with getting their produce, and what you can do via software or logistics or otherwise that would improve their experience. So I think the way to figure out the answer to this question, because I'm assuming you're definitely much more of an expert when it comes to sourcing hyperlocal produce in Nigeria than me. Ask your customers what they're looking for. What are their issues today with their alternatives, whether it's going to the market or otherwise? And I think the answer will come out of that. I think you'll find a much better answer talking to your existing customers than I'll be able to give as like an outsider to this industry. If I were to draw a parallel though, with what American companies like, I forget, there's a company that basically did this for not perfect produce. I don't know if you remember that. I don't remember the name of the company, but their competitive advantage was basically sourcing imperfect produce. That's it. Thanks for jogging my memory there. And drawing a parallel there was a company that in America would source like the not as perfect produce and sell it at a discount to consumers. And the advantage there, how they differentiated themselves, was by far a cheaper price point, and also the convenience of having it delivered to your door rather than having to go to the grocery store or something like that. So I would look at any one of those angles, whether it's like improving price, improving convenience, as areas where you can differentiate yourself. All right, moving on to the next one, which is Lomger, which is doing e-commerce analytics, I believe. So, yep, lifetime value with retention analytics. So kind of like an amplitude for your e-commerce store. And their question is, it's a crowded space with no clear winner. How do I think your positioning should be? Right now, you're focusing on retention. Global first, but should I leverage being in Brazil and prioritizing the local market because translations and internationalization, etc. So let me answer the second question first, because I think the answer there is more straightforward. I think you should absolutely build for a specific target customer. It might be like Brazil. It might be not necessarily language specific. It might be industry specific. So for example, you might be focusing on a certain slice of e-commerce stores that have, I don't know, sell a certain amount of average order value, have a certain number of revenue, of monthly revenue, basically have like a very specific kind of criteria or numbers. The reason being is that it lets you tailor your product more specifically to a target user. Eventually, you probably do want to grow to service all different kinds of companies, from small ones to like enterprise level e-commerce stores. But I think in the early days, when you're scoping out the problem, it's easier to build for a specific set of criteria that's shared amongst your target customer base, as opposed to trying to satisfy a large number of them, just because the needs of customers are different. And as a startup, your resources are limited, so it's easier to build something that's more focused towards a specific customer demographic than trying to build something for all those people. So I think that answers that second question. And one way to do that is focusing on a certain kind of language, like it could be e-commerce stores within Brazil that are doing this, a certain kind of that are shipping a certain amount of products. So the first question then was, it's a crowded space with no clear winner. How do I think about positioning here? I think e-commerce stores, unlike software companies, have, I think it boils down to unit economics a lot more cleanly than software companies. And what I mean by that is, like, you can pretty clearly draw the line between customer comes in and the amount it takes to acquire that customer compared to how much we make on them over the course of a lifetime is more. And therefore, this channel is like, we want to basically get more users, we can spend more money on it, etc. So like, I think like the calculations of unit economics in like e-commerce is like pretty straightforward, money in, money out kind of thing. Of course, that is with other businesses as well, but I think e-commerce in particular definitely follows that kind of model. With that said, I think, with that being said, I think the approach you should take should then focus pretty heavily on unit economics, like ROI. Just like if I were to draw a comparison, I would say like the ads business, like money in, money out, being like having pretty clear unit economics. What people care about at the end of the day becomes clear. And I think the way that I'll position it when it comes to like e-commerce is that it's pretty clear what these people are looking for. They're looking for acquiring customers and getting like a high lifetime value out of it that's greater than the amount it took to acquire them. So I think positioning it as like the simplest way to, like, in this case, increase lifetime value makes a lot of sense to me, because it speaks to what like every e-commerce store cares about, which is getting more money in the door. So I think just the way that you would tease this out is just by talking to a bunch of e-commerce founders or e-commerce stores and seeing what they care about. My guess is lifetime value is the right thing, and everything around that. So whether it's retention analytics or like acquiring more valuable customers, I would imagine that people would be willing to pay for anything that basically gets them more money, right? And I think because the number of steps it takes from in the door to making money is pretty short when it comes to e-commerce, then focusing on that makes sense. So hopefully that answers those questions. Moving on and switching over to Daniel, where the question here is landing page feedback for Qzee.
Well, thank you, Andrew. I'll let you navigate to the page. And now, thank you. So my job here will be to narrate what I'm thinking when I see this page. And I see it's not just a queue app. It's a new take on booking and queuing. Last minute plans are encouraged. Okay, so it's like when us Americans go to Yelp, we can sometimes queue up for restaurants or Resi. And I guess this is better for that somehow. And it seems to be focused on the United Kingdom because it's listing its revenue in British pounds. And the buttons to the App Store and Google Play aren't clickable. So I'm not going to give business model feedback. I'll just give landing page feedback. I think this is the thing. Unfortunately, I'm the wrong person to review this, but my understanding is people who like, particular restaurants, to the extent this offers you, access to kind of interesting restaurants, really, really like those restaurants. So I was making this homepage, I'd probably find a way to feature that a little bit more. Like how can we feature the individual restaurants we have? If they're good and famous, and if you don't have any good and famous restaurants, could be a good time to try and get those booked. I assume there's a reason why you think that's a better idea than whatever they're currently using for queuing. So that could be a nice thing to add to the homepage, make it visual. And you could even have a dedicated landing page, like if you get the whatever Cardiff Dough and Co, and that's like a well-known thing in Cardiff, then you can have like a, always get into Cardiff Dough and Co. Yeah, and more broadly, I would say this landing page is kind of it's like a landing page for investors, not for users. So generally, the landing page I think should be for users. Like we can see here, the big problem: 25% is something, and 17.6 billion is something. Users don't care about that; they just want to get their dough from the Cardiff Dough and Co. So that's how I would change it. And you might say, well, we actually need investors. Right now, we need investors. We don't need users. And you even have a page, invest. And I'd say if you want more investors, make your thing appeal to users. Yeah, it's sort of weird. I mean, you can have like a hidden page that has, I think, your my suggestion would be if you wanted to do all this, and it's kind of nice you laid everything out here. It's like your own kind of Crunchbase page. You put that on some hidden page, you really focus the homepage about the product and the users. And more broadly, focusing on getting users is the best way to get investors. So that is my landing page feedback.
All right. Very good. Moving on to the next one, which is Grahamity. And their question is, we're having an incredibly difficult time converting sales, and we largely believe that this is because we don't have a shippable product yet. Do you believe our assessment is correct? And what do you think we could do to get some pre-sales?
Well, since the obvious answer to the question would be yes, we should try to think of how the answer can be no. So maybe, look, it is true. I mean, Bill Gates famously sold Microsoft Floating Point Basic before he wrote it. And there's all these stories about, preemptively selling software. So maybe you don't always need things. Go to your landing page. I'd say the main reason you're not, I don't know at what stage of the funnel you're not converting people. Maybe you're not converting them from this page. Maybe they're filling out all the way to their credit card form buried somewhere, and then they're not hitting submit. If I had to hazard a guess, I'd say they're not converting really from anywhere on this page. Like the bounce rate on this page is pretty high. So the good news for you guys is I actually don't think you need to ship more product. Well, you kind of just need to spruce up the landing page a little bit. I really don't know what this does.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell from there's a video explainer video, but I feel like you shouldn't rely entirely on your video to explain what your product does. So it sounds like you have an easier time clearing your inbox, or handling email. But a lot of the text here, like who we are, how we can make a difference, doesn't seem geared towards similarly to the last landing page we looked at, seems geared a little bit more towards like investors, like putting out this product roadmap and all of that. It looks like you're soliciting investors as opposed to users. And I think if you want to get sales, you should be pitching probably to potential users and customers.
Very similar to our prior feedback, Andrew.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Agreed. So I think cleaning this up to maybe ask yourself, well, what is a user who has a bunch of email that they need to get through, or has an issue following up with lost leads? What do they care about? If I were to just completely just brainstorm my way through this, I would go along the lines and say something like, salespeople that drop leads that turn into lost revenue is probably a big problem across a lot of different big companies. They need something to help manage their CRM or their email better. We can build something for them. What do they care about? How can we build a landing page that fulfills their needs? How do we market to someone like that? And then use that as a launch pad for all the other stuff. That's kind of the way that I would go about thinking about it.
That sounds great,
right.
great and good at the same time. So next up we have
woffice. I like that name. Do you believe we are managing to communicate our product well? We are at a stage where we're starting to consolidate our product. We need to grow our base. Do you have any advice for customer acquisition? So 2 questions. Are we communicating well? And advice for customer acquisition.
All right. So here we are at the home page, and it says no cost, no waste, no worries. You're getting it? No cost, no. It's a virtual office manager. And so, okay, so the question was, are you communicating well? And I'd say, I'm not going to click on the video. And I don't really know what you do. So no, to me, you're not communicating well is the honest feedback I can give you. If you scroll down, I guess there's a fact. What is woffice? And then there's this question, is woffice an ERP? Is it a CRM? It's whatever you want without labels. So no, I don't think, I mean, this is an example of not communicating well because it feels very vague. Now, it might be that this is some sort of office manager and kind of like a Zirtual thing. This could be a Zirtual thing. So like someone could be the behind the scenes EA for early stage startup teams, an EA for every early stage startup. That sounds like an interesting pitch. I think the confusing thing is that, by the way, I would like to say kudos on the polygons in the background. They're kind of nice to look at. It seems like some WebGL thing is being used here. So it's relatively efficient on my computer. Seems like the landing page is trying to kind of be a billboard, like a billboard on a highway, which is neat, but it's kind of not what you want on the landing page. You might think you would, but you don't. It needs to be much more transactional, I think. So I would try to have like a tagline that is very simple description of what it is that you do.
Yeah, if I were to add anything, it would be like being able to communicate the problem that you solve for somebody. I think when I hear virtual office manager, my mind doesn't immediately go to a place and be like, oh yeah, I would use a virtual office manager for that.
Yeah.
So I think you need to tie your tagline to something that is maybe more easily identifiable. Like a very simple thing would be like automation for your CRM. And someone thinks, oh yeah, my CRM needs more automation because like there's a bunch of manual stuff that I need to do. That's a very contrived example, but basically being able to tie your tagline to a problem. Maybe it's just the case that I'm not the target market and I can't, and there are people out there that can make the jump from needing like a virtual office manager to something else. But I think that could probably be tidied up.
Yes. Andrew, tell us a little bit about Shootfolder.
All right, moving on to Shootfolder. And their question is, what should I be working on or towards while the main website is under development? While the main website is under development. It makes it sound like someone else is working on the website and you have like some free time to work on something else. I would say like, I don't entirely understand the question, but I think what you're saying is like, this is, I mean, first understand what you're doing. So are you doing Airbnb for filming locations, basically, like offering up like nice either backdrops or like places that you own for people to film? So my understanding of this question is that there's currently like either you or some other people are working on this website and you're wondering like what you should be prioritizing. I mean, everything, whatever it takes to get your users, right? I mean, whether it's building the website or reaching out to users to talk to them to see what they need, what they're looking for, feels like the right thing for you to work on. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's more color here, but I mean, your landing page makes sense. I like that your tagline is pretty straightforward. Discover locations, book and shoot. It tells me who the target customer is, people who are shooting videos. It tells me what the product is, finding locations to shoot said videos. So I think you guys do a good job of communicating what you do. I mean, whatever, like in terms of like task prioritization, just finding your first customer, like everything that goes into that, which is probably a combination of building out the tech to handle the marketplace, to handle the booking, to handle scheduling, all that sort of stuff. But you also need, as it is with any sort of marketplace, to acquire both supply and demand. So I guess if your question is really like someone's working on the technical stuff of building the website, what should I be doing aside from that? It's finding customers both on the side of people that are going to be providing locations and people that and companies that are looking to shoot at such locations. So yeah, customer acquisition is what I would say is the right first thing for you working on, if not the technical stuff. Hope that answers your question. Moving on to the next one, which is Slayerscolony. How do I convince people to move away from the traditional fast fashion and adopting this method of getting clothes? And how should I be spending, much should I be spending on ads to bring awareness to the product? Okay, so this is like curated marketplace to connect freelance designers and buyers. So like custom clothing, that's what it sounds like. The first question is interesting. How can I convince users that this is like a better way of getting clothes? I've always thought it's very difficult to create a consumer product that changes user behavior. Just because consumers are like, I don't know, like it's one thing telling them that this is like a better way to do something, and it's a whole other thing for them to actually do it. And I think that's been the issue with plenty of consumer apps that have been tried and failed because they just didn't end up getting users. I'm not sure if that's honestly the right way of thinking about it, is saying this is better, you should use it. Because oftentimes that approach comes in with like some sort of preconceived notion of what things should be, which is, I think, is correct. But oftentimes reality doesn't match up to that. And I think the way that users decide to adopt a new product, it can happen for a bunch of reasons, and it may not be the reason you expect. So what I would do to go about like convincing people to move away from like traditional fast fashion to doing this is by showing them that it really is a better experience. And the way that you might do that is like start by acquiring some users and with whatever method, ads or organic or whatever, and get feedback from them. Is this better than the previous experience? Are they willing to recommend it to their friends? And if so, can you set up some sort of like referral program where you can bring in other people to, use your product if people become your biggest ambassadors? And that's kind of how it happens with a lot of like consumer social applications, is that it gets better when other people are on the platform and it becomes an easier acquisition strategy to bring other people in. And I would ask yourself if there's a way of like going about this. But we were to draw a parallel, like Stitch Fix as like one example of like coming up with a better way of getting clothes that's more convenient, and they set up like a referral program to bring in more people. I would say like you need to get to an initial base of users where you can confidently say every single, like all these people said that this way of getting clothes was better than like the traditional way. And then you can kind of work on building out like either a referral program or other acquisition channels. But I think before you get there, you need to basically find the small group of people that love your products before you're really able to take the next step of like convincing more people to come and try it. So basically find your first like fanatics. Where are those people? Where are those people that are dissatisfied with their current ways of getting clothes, and how can you get those people onto your platform through whatever means? I think that's probably the right first step for you. And other question on spending money on ads. I think it makes a little bit more sense to spend money on ads when you kind of have a repeatable process where it's clear that for the money it takes to bring people in the door, you get more money out of them through lifetime value. Now, if you are having a hard time acquiring users initially and getting that initial base, I think it's fine to use some paid ads, but doing it at scale, I think only makes sense for when you're more in the growth stage, when you already have a clear sense of product market fit to spend more money on advertisements. Okay, moving to the next one is Inequalis, and the question is, how do I fundraise for this? Oh, we're redirecting to the website, so making our way there. Okay, whoa, that is quite the web page. I can see why it took a lot of load. Okay, FPS and RTS with 5v1 gameplay. When I think of 5v1, I think of that Friday the 13th game where there's like 5 survivors and like one person that's trying to take them all out. Reminds you of that. Okay, 1 game, 2 genres, FPS and RTS. Okay. A lot better gear. Okay, so you're basically building a game. And your question is how to fundraise for something like this. So I think the right first step is aligning the thing that you're doing with expectations on an investment, where I think for the most part, games don't receive traditional venture investment, or game studios don't receive traditional venture investment. And that's just kind of the way the industry works, where most of the mobile games out there, for example, aside from the really big publishers, haven't raised venture capital, just because the economics of like market size and player base and all of that is more likely to sustain like a non-venture scale, like non-billion plus dollar company. So the first step is like aligning expectations with finding the right kinds of investors for your products, where if most games, not all games, some games are, but most games aren't the right fit for venture capital. And as a result, that kind of narrows the target investor base that you can go for. So, I mean, how you would raise for something like this is once you first step is identifying the right investor. So whether it's people that traditionally invest in games or otherwise, the next step is hitting like the right kind of metrics that they're looking for. If you can find investors that are willing to invest on an idea, right, then those are the people you should be talking to. If you find investors, but you think typically in this industry, it requires some sort of, I don't know, significant user base, like you need to get to like 1K, 2K users, you need to make money, then if that's the realistic part of the industry, then you would need to hit those sorts of metrics before you're ready to raise from the people that invest in the space. Typically, as someone who has spent most of their time in like traditional venture capital, the gaming related companies that do raise venture capital tend to do a bit more than, or tend to do something different than just building like a mobile game or a PC game. Most of them tend to build software in the gaming industry. So whether it's like software to help organize esports events or like software to do something adjacent to gaming, not necessarily gaming itself. So I would say if your expectations are in raising like traditional venture capital, I would say that's probably more difficult to do given the space that you're in. All right. Hope that answers your question. Moving on back to Daniel, your company is Babycharm, and their question is, how can we improve our website to increase conversions? Oh, wow. That's interesting.
All right, well, this website, how can you improve it to increase conversions? Well, okay, well, I'm actually not an e-commerce expert, but I can tell you my experience as a user looking at this website. I think you can probably make the homepage, just like the image that you see when you get to the homepage, be a bit more about the product. I'll be honest with you, like I hate to say this, I'm not saying it's the best homepage, but like if you just, after you click through to get yours, this is to my head, a much more understandable page than the prior one. So I'm not saying you should have this one, but I think if you instead of having like a huge image with a blurred necklace or whatever, had the actual product in there, you'd probably increase conversion a bunch. I think it's the lowest hanging fruit. You sort of have it under the fold, one of a kind necklace section. And so honestly, if you just got rid of the top and you just had the one of a kind, necklace, you replace that with like maybe what it is, which you say nicely here further up, turn your baby's ultrasound into a unique 3D printed necklace. If you just had a button, in that second section, it might do much better. And then, and that's my 2 cents, is that just like the top hero image is bad. The rest of the website's, I think, better. There's probably a meta point, which is important to convey to the Babycharm people, which is in these e-commerce / D2C type businesses, like there is a relentless iteration that you'll have to do on like the landing page and what converts, much more than like you're gonna have to do the feedback I gave you. I think you should implement, and then you need to go do that 50 more times with other people and see what they think. The other way to, of course, accelerate that is to just look at other related homepages. But that's my quick feedback to you, is just make the second section the top section and skip the top section.
Yep. My meta feedback here is to set up tracking for conversions, which you may already have, on like how many clicks it takes to get there and drop off at each stage. And that's the data you would use to relentlessly iterate on this. Like once you implement Daniel's suggestion, how did that improve the conversion? And then go back and, like Daniel said, do it a bunch more times. So, all right. Next one, which is pitch deck feedback for this website. Which is, this is the website. And this is the pitch deck.
And what we're trying to do now is back on the pitch deck. There's also, well, okay, to the extent we could just focus our time, just focus on the pitch deck. Okay, so this is, right, okay, my first piece of feedback here on the second slide, I would include what it actually is. A problem slide is a great idea, but the second slide should usually be what it actually is. It's a common, I think, mistake people make because it's so obvious to them what it is. It's in their head all day. So let's imagine there's a giant slide here that said more efficient wind turbines, maybe. And then we have now our problem slide. You could just make this 3 bullet points, 4 bullet points. And then the slide where it says like a solution, there's all sorts of stuff going on here, all sorts of 3D shapes and whatever. There's like a convex. Is that a convex or concave? Anyway, there's all sorts of shapes. And I don't know that you need those shapes. I kind of think if you just had the solution is, we build efficient wind turbines using maglevs and magnets somehow, that'd be better. Because my eyes are kind of they're looking at all sorts of unnecessary things like the arrows and the 5 megawatt and the 3 megawatt. Anyway, that's how I would fix that up. Unique selling points, USPs. You sort of don't need, you don't need to repeat that in whatever lingo USPs is. This needs to be merged with the prior slide about like what the solution is somehow. This is one slide, and there's got to be a way to basically, I think what would be convenient for me as an investor is like one slide to see how you're kind of different than other wind turbine solutions. Okay, this is actually a decent slide, competitive advantage. I don't know that I necessarily believe as an investor, like the value of IP is different depending on the industry that you're in. Maybe it's useful here, maybe not, who knows. Lower cost of electricity, shorter turnaround times, a decent slide. Traction. Don't think, this person is a pioneer. So from your perspective, you would not want to overrepresent that, of course, because at some point someone will call us, and we'll say that, you know, whatever state you're currently in, which is you are a very welcome member of the tournament. So maybe you just want to be a bit more specific about that, I would be also specific about whatever else is listed here. Like, is Microsoft Founders Hub a thing you kind of sign up for? Or do you have like a unique relationship with them? Anyway, so it'd be a bit more specific about whatever's going on there. You can skip the customer slide. Kind of, yeah, I wasn't learning much there. Business model, yeah. Would be good to have a business model slide. I don't really understand this one. I think maybe the business model is to just sell. Is the idea here that, like, in addition to selling the turbine, you get some of the electricity? So there's a subscription model. Anyway, I would clarify that a little bit. And everything else, I think, can be an appendix. I mean, the team is definitely great to bring up, but everything else can be an appendix. This investment needed slide is usually not included in the initial outreach decks. So that's my high level. I think it's actually nice. It's probably a bit too good, meaning working too hard. There's too many cool 3D shapes, and you don't need to work that hard. I just think if you present the facts, how you're different from the existing wind turbines, all that stuff, I think it should bode really well. Anyway, that's my feedback on Minagie energy. All right.
All right. Next one, which is Engly. The question is, build an app or integrate with WhatsApp or Messenger.
Okay, so this is a website that lets you practice English. The years ago, of course, the answer was always build a website wherever you can. Building an app was really hard. Building an app's obviously become easier over time with all sorts of frameworks and whatnot. And it seems like the value prop is literally like that you can do it wherever and whenever you want. So if it's really like the idea is that you're like, waiting in line or in your dentist's office waiting for them, and you're just going to quickly have a quick chat in English and practice your language, then I guess you would want to, like, maybe that works. You can just integrate with, WhatsApp, and you don't need to build your own dedicated app if that's all you're planning to do. If there's like more complex features that require like a dedicated app, then maybe you need to make that too. I misunderstood the question initially. I thought you were wondering whether you should build a desktop app or a mobile app, but what I said there at the end, that kind of applies. I probably just get started with the chatbot and see how far you can get there. The main benefit of chatbots is if you can actually make it work and it's enjoyable to use, then the distribution problem is much lower. It's probably 5 times easier to start messaging someone new as opposed to downloading an app. So the advantage to building an app is that you have kind of your own sense of place in the consumer's mind. And like, certainly if you could snap your fingers and have everyone install your app, you'd rather them do that than have a chatbot, but it's really hard to do. So on the margin, I just start with the chatbot stuff and see how far you can get.
The other benefit is turnaround time on development, where if you wanted to build your own app, it might require a bunch of resources of reinventing some stuff. Whereas if you use an existing platform, distribution and turnaround when it comes to development is shorter. And that's a pretty big competitive advantage, especially in the early days when you have limited development resources. So, all right, moving on to the next one, which is Linkyio. And their question is, it's been development for about 5 months and a few people are using it. What should my next move be? I'd like to focus on engaging a specific group like startup founders, as I have connections there. So seems like basically how can we move beyond this like initial set of users that are like, personal friends in my own network? Create a simple web page for free. Oh, I thought I could click this. Watch demo. Oh, it's just a 30-second sounds like I could just do this myself. So if I create a page, hi there, test, nothing much. And I post it, this will create my own custom web page that I can share with anybody else. All right, so basically easily creatable, very simple web pages. So the question that I would have is, this is like, or the feedback I would have for you is, it seems like a pretty broad use case, right? Like create a simple web page for free. And I think this could potentially appeal to a lot of different people. Now, that's both good and bad. It's good in that you can appeal to a lot of people. Like that's obviously a good thing. You have a lot of potential customers. The bad thing is that it's not very targeted, where like what you want when someone visits your page is not like, I think I could kind of see myself using this thing. It's, oh, wow, this like definitely solves a big problem that I have. That's the kind of reaction you want, especially when you're very early on, right? When you want to, that's the response you want to elicit. And the sense I'm getting from this is that you've built it to be more of that broader use case. I would position it to be a bit more specific, to actually narrow down the scope of, here are some very simple examples, like create like, there's the link tree example, create like links to your social profiles. There's the notes example, like quickly create like notes or something like that. But you can imagine there are a bunch of different use cases for different kinds of users. I think the reason why that might be an interesting next step for you is because it lets you do targeted outreach. Like if you're building for, I don't know, engineers or creators or like marketers or, something specific like that, then it becomes a lot easier to find those people and talk to them and get feedback for the thing that you're building. So although it seems a little counterintuitive when it comes to like markets, sizing, whatever, I actually think it makes sense to narrow your scope a bit to find who to branch out to. Because right now, I don't think it's obvious the direction that you would take this, because it's so open-ended, because you could take it in so many potential directions. So yeah, I would narrow the scope and see where that takes you. Very simple though. I liked how the call to action is very straightforward. It takes me like literally 2 clicks to build a page. Like the product is simple and it makes sense. So good work there. All right, so this is a Figma mock, and their thing is they have a bunch of questions. Okay, they have questions around metrics. Okay, the first few questions seem to just be around metrics. So let's ask like the question, I'll simplify it to like, what numbers should I be tracking? All right. And the other question is, I'll just focus on that one. That seems like the right first one to start with. So we got a bunch of stuff here. Let's take a look. Okay, so gains. This is Uber Fitness to make the user, bring the user and personal trainer together. Okay. Trainer, find location, move, book, yeah. So booking your trainers. Okay, that's it. So what's the right metric for tracking this? I mean, first off is, I think it's unclear to me if you already have the app for this. I remember Max, when I was looking at your Pioneer application about a year ago, you're wondering, the feedback you're looking for was whether you should hire a developer to build this app or if you should learn to code yourself and build it. So I'm not sure the progress you've made since then, but the first step is obviously having like a working app that you can get in the hands of users. And right now it looks from these mocks that this is like the outline for it, but I'm not sure if it exists yet. So first step number 1 is getting a product in the hands of users. And that actually happens before you even track metrics, is like the anecdotal evidence of like someone using your app and be like, yeah, I could see myself using that, and talking with them one-on-one. So that's like step 1, is getting the app in the hand of a user and talking to them about it. Step 2 is like, okay, well, let's say you already have that. Let's say you have the app. Let's say users are using it. What things you should be tracking? I would say there's 2 things. One is just simple user acquisition. How many users do you have in a given month or in a given week, and are they coming back? So like that's usage and retention. It's a simple, very simple KPI. Monthly active users, 30-day retention, easy. Beyond that, I would look at things like, if you want to get more specific about KPIs, you would care about what probably a lot of things about Uber cares about, which is repeat booking. So after someone books the first time, how often do they book the second time? Lifetime value. How many on average, based on like average user lifetime and how often they book, how much money are you making off an individual user? Because that gives you information for what your unit economics are and how much you should be spending on acquisition. On the marketplace side, on supply and demand, making sure, like another simple one is making sure there's ample supply to meet demand. Do we have enough coaches on the platform? Are they sticking around? Are we solving their problems and helping them get new business? Those are the kind of KPIs that you want to track for a marketplace. On investors, like I'm like, again, I'm still not sure what the state you are in today, but I think before you can get investors, you need a product and you need users. I don't think having like your deck looks good, but I think what is better is if you can point us to a working app that we can engage with and you have users that are using that app. So so I think the right next step for you really is just getting that app out and getting users, more so than like, I think that's honestly step 0 before you even start tracking all this other stuff. And to track how well your company is doing, like obviously post launch, it's all those numbers I talked about. Before that, it's, well, what's the date for launch? What's the date of you getting your first user? All right, hope that answers that question, those questions. Next one is applied. How should I be thinking about optimizing process and coding versus marketing for new customers? What additional questions do I have after visiting the site, if any? So it sounds like a prioritization question of like, should I be spending time building versus marketing, acquiring users? And then any questions? I don't know, I use Google's doing a bit of a redirect here. Okay, automate your job search. Companies automate hiring, type automate job search, apply once, common app, apply for 300 to 300 companies. Okay. Yes, job search sucks. Coding versus marketing for new customers. So it sounds like your questions are, how should I split my time? It's presumably as like a solo founder, is the vibe I'm getting from this, between building and getting users. Well, there's a few different, like, you'll probably get mixed things here. I think it's a pretty iterative process. Like some people say that you should focus on building for a long period of time and then launching and then talking to users. Some people say you should be constantly iterating with your users of launching something light and then talking with users afterwards, the lean approach, right? I think the right step is honestly the right process, depending on the company you're building, is a mix of the two. It sounds like for you, it probably leans more towards the leaner approach, given the industry that you're in, where it's probably not difficult to find users of people looking for jobs. It's actually a nice problem because like job seekers are going to be on as many platforms as they can to optimize their chances of getting a job just by simple, like, spraying and praying or whatever, or like what have you. So just being on as many platforms as possible is like a benefit in that I don't think it'll be hard for you to find someone who's willing to use your site to apply to jobs. So I think what you should do is you should find a bunch of those people, right? Get them onto your site and then just start talking to them and to see if your product is helping them solve their needs, right? Solve for their needs. Are they, getting interviews? Are they getting past this phone screen? Are they like hearing back from companies, that sort of thing? So yeah, I think that the iterative process makes sense here, where I don't think it's hard to find users. Therefore, you can spend more time building, talking to users and like getting feedback from them. So yeah, that's the feedback I would have there. I don't think I have any questions. Like, I guess one simple question is like, well, like, can I sign up? Like, it sounds like right now you're pre-launch. I guess if it costs anything for the user is another question that I would have if I was a prospective user. Other than that, I think it's pretty straightforward. I guess the question I would have, maybe not as a user but as an investor, is that this has been done many times before. There's the network affinity problem, like I said before, of like you just being on all these different platforms. What makes you different? Why would you succeed when there's plenty of platforms such as, I don't know, AngelList or Hired that grew to a certain size, but having scaled, there hasn't been like a giant company that's been built in this space yet, specifically for the job seekers. So Yep, that's my feedback there. Moving on for Daniel, we have, does the landing page describe a product you would recommend to appear? So landing page feedback. But this person wants to know most likely from 1 to 10. Would you recommend this to appear? Their approach is the paid beta with a discount in exchange for feedback. Do you think this is a good approach?
Well, thank you, Andrew. I mean, let's see, get actionable insights about your engineering or innovation team in minutes. I don't know that, I think there's a version of this landing page that certainly I would recommend. And so I think, if people could make tools that help teams with kind of continuous feedback as opposed to, both manual and discontinuous quarterly feedback, I think that would be fantastic. And so if this is a thing that's going to like analyze the engineering team's productivity and give them a quantifiable metric, fantastic. I think would definitely recommend that. I'd probably want to see a demo of it in action on some open source repo. But this version of the homepage, it would be hard for me to recommend just because I don't know that it's specific enough about how exactly it's going to work. So it's of course a bit hard to underwrite. And if you click on get started, you get thrown into like a create account flow. So still don't really see it. I guess there's a video, but the video looks like it's going to be in Spanish. Plus, I don't really watch homepage videos, to be totally frank. It's not that I think highly of myself. I'm just saying, like, as a user, I don't really do that. I suspect this is not actually a GitHub measure your code commit quality thing. It's a bit more of like a Tony Robbins, help a team with innovation a bit more. So anyway, I'm sure there's a great way to communicate that too, but I want the product to be a bit more specific on what it does.
And as for the question of they look like they're looking for a number from 1 to 10 here.
Hey, in the current homepage, I obviously think, again, there probably is one that I would give a certainly like a 9 to. I don't think it's the current version of the homepage though.
All right.
Yeah. So they also say they're going to offer paid beta with a big discount in exchange for feedback. That sounds great. That sounds like a really great idea. Initial, okay, now we have Helloao. What are the important points to keep in mind as we make our initial hires without any paying customers, wanting to make sure that the team has work available, but not knowing exactly what the market will provide yet? Make initial hires without any paying customers. Let's also see what it is. On-demand application. Oh, it's another application helper thing. I don't necessarily think you need paying customers in order to hire. I mean, Figma certainly didn't have literally any paying customers for its first 3 or 4 years, something like that. It turned on payments very late in the game. So yeah, you don't necessarily need paying customers. So of course, very helpful because then you had good product market fit. I would say, I mean, it's a bit of a general question. So it's hard to give a specific answer. I mean, you might be hiring people to do very specific things that you kind of need in order to bootstrap and get to product market fit. It could be that you're just hiring people because you want to hire people. I kind of doubt that's the case, but it's a possibility. So yeah, but I don't think you need like paying users as a function to hire people, although it is helpful to have product market fit through some metric, like people are excited about what you're doing in a way where that excitement is being communicated in some form of scarcity, either by them giving you kind of attention or them giving you money. Money basically is an information system, but no need to really dig into that. So anyway, I would just hire people if you have acute needs for them, and it seems like a good idea. I think there's like many little agencies that do stuff like this, I imagine, and so maybe you can kind of turn it into like a Fiverr platform for that. It's cool. And then last and certainly not least, with 3 minutes left here on the clock. we have smartnap.de, and they want to know how they can increase their credibility. What's the best? They also want to know what the best way to monetize their learning app. No one will pay if they don't think it'll work. If it's free, the user doesn't learn anything, but they don't make any money. That is correct. We only want ads if we can implement them in a way that kind of works with their design. Okay, so the first question was kind of an interesting one. Learning while sleeping, and let's see, this is an awesome idea.
I understand what you're talking about when it comes to credibility, because it feels like an outlandish thing, but I like how you have an evidence button very close by.
Yeah, I clicked the evidence button and it says the proof. Learn more. I guess you're working on this. That's why you're asking us. So yeah, okay. So establishing credibility. It's usually kind of a brand game at the end of the day, right? I think that's how people do that stuff with kind of testimonials. The lowest level of that being like random humans gave you 5 stars. So you arrive at some home pages at some point, and you of course see like photos of like literally random people that are, I assume, from randompeoplephotos.com, and then a 5-star thing. And that is like the baseline of credibility people have. I mean, some people see that as scammy. I kind of do, but obviously not everyone, because that happens a lot. The second is, the people themselves might not have brands, but the rating system has some sense of credibility. So like 5 stars on App Store, 5 stars on Capterra, 5 stars on, Yelp, whatever. So maybe you can do that if you can get some good early reviews that people like on a different rating system. It's like a different currency that people trust. And the level above that is, you have like testimonials from like humans that are known to like be like sleep experts, like Matthew Walker says, you're amazing and whatnot. And so that's really helpful. And then the level beyond that is, of course, you guys yourselves have, all sorts of odd credibilities and PhDs and degrees and whatnot. And then the level, obviously the extreme level is just that this itself becomes a brand. So anyway, I probably missed a few levels, but that's an overall framework, I think, for establishing credibility. You get any of those, and I think you'd be good. I'd probably start with, honestly, kind of sort of building the app and getting a few reviews on maybe the App Store or something, and then that are hopefully good, and then putting that up here. I think that'll help a lot. I know when I kind of view these, I look at a lot of landing pages, and if they have something on the App Store, I'll definitely go look at their reviews, and that matters. I wouldn't say it matters like 1,000% because it's pretty easily gamed, but it matters a bit. Yeah, I mean, I certainly think that matters a lot for you guys, and it certainly matters whether it works or not. Maybe you tell me that its ability to work is somewhat reflexive, like maybe you have to really believe that it's going to work. I don't know. Dreaming is like a really weird, sleeping is like a really weird, unsteady thing. You know about that more than me. By the way, the one final thing I should say in credibility is there's like, irrespective of these acute ways of establishing credibility, a kind of broad sense of credibility comes from just like having nice, good, high quality design, which you guys certainly have. The websites are ending in HTML, which like to 0.01% of the world will indicate that you're not that serious because it's a bunch of static pages, but you can fix that easily, plus may not matter. And then you also wanted to know how to monetize learning. Monetize your education learning app. Yeah, I mean, it seems like something that you could have a trial for, and if the trial works, I assume conversion will be really high if you let people learn while they sleep. It's like you have a huge, if true, company. I really wouldn't worry about making money right now because you have a execution risk problem, not a market risk problem. So you have execution risk businesses. Your goal is to de-risk the execution. So I would just do that and make sure it works. And if it does, then it's not going to be hard to monetize. All right, that's it.
All right. Thanks very much, Daniel, for taking the time.
Thank you very much
for tuning in.
All right, over and out, everyone. Hope you have a great